Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to The 3-Month Vacation. Imagine being so calm that you sleep through your alarm on the day of your presentation. When I first started with seminars, I was always extremely stressed out. 4 weeks before the event, I would have to put together the slides, write notes, and I'd be thinking about the event the whole time. Day after day, I'd be winding myself up. However, that situation changed considerably for me when Diane Hendrickson came into my life. Today's episode is about presentations. It's a topic I don't cover very much, but I'm very fond of doing presentations. I love going on stage. I like speaking to audiences. And you wouldn't know that I'm nervous. And the reason for that is there's a certain amount of preparation. Because everybody gets nervous and extremely nervous before they have to give a presentation. However, in many cases, it is a fear that can be reduced to the point where you sleep through your alarm and you're not so stressed out. Here are 3 things that you need to consider that will change the way you approach the preparation for your presentation. The first is external validation in advance. The second is to memorize the first few lines. And the third is to distract yourself before the event. And to kick off the first one, let's bring back Diane Hendrickson. Diane wasn't a trainer, but a client. She had signed up for the 2-day event that I was hosting in Auckland, New Zealand. And she was the last person to sign up. I was chatting with her, and I told her that I was extremely nervous. I don't know why I did that. I didn't really know her that well, but something about her made me confide in her. And to her credit, she took it in her stride. She invited me over to her place and asked me to go over the slides of the presentation. I printed all of the slides on sheets of paper, and then we went through a rough run-through of what I was going to say the next day. In that run-through, what we covered wasn't very polished, and yet it calmed me down completely. In fact, I was so calm that I did something that I've never done. I did not wake up at 4 a.m. I slept right through my alarm. You have to ask yourself, why did this concept work? It did not work because of the obvious reason. Most people think that if you practice, you will get less nervous, you will have everything in place. And this is not a point that I'm trying to make here. This is not about practice. For every presentation that I've ever done, I've gone through the information and the slides as many as 16 to 17 times over. However, I'm still very edgy on the night before the presentation. There have been nights when I haven't been able to sleep until 2 a.m., and then finally fall asleep and wake up at 5 a.m. Yet that was not the case in this instance. And the reason why I was so calm is because of this first point that we're going to cover, which is external validation. External validation is when someone other than your immediate family or your friends give you a note of approval. All of us need this level of validation from strangers. For example, let's say you've just written a book. You show it to your partner, you show it to your friends, and they all say, "Oh, we love it, it's beautiful, it's wonderful." But you still want a stranger to write back. You still want a client to write back. You want them to tell you how much they enjoyed your book or which part of the book they enjoyed. And if they go into a great amount of detail, then you feel even more excited about what you've just done, what you've just put out in the world. This is external validation. It's coming from an outside source. In the same manner, when you're giving a presentation, you need that external validation. Now, this is where we run into a problem. You can't just go on the street and go, "Hey, can you help me with my presentation?" So we have to go to a friend that we can trust and then see the response that we're getting as we're explaining our concept. This friend needn't be an expert, shouldn't be an expert. This friend is an audience member, just like anybody in your audience. They're just there to listen and to tell you how they felt about things. They're not supposed to give you extensive feedback. They're just telling you the parts that they liked and which parts confused them. As a result, you will be able to fix those minor problems. But more importantly, you will get great energy from having the external validation. You put something out and the energy came back. That's more important. Remember, it's not about practice. Practice, you can do all of that. But you have to get someone to give you that validation back. Which is what Diane did for me on that day before the presentation. It wasn't like I didn't know what I was talking about. I had made that presentation dozens of times before. It wasn't like I hadn't done enough rehearsals. However, just going through that exercise, I got that external validation. I calmed down completely. And instead of being all stressed out, I enjoyed myself. If there's one thing that you can do to release all of that stress, it is to get someone that you trust and then just run the information through them. Ideally, you'd want to have all the slides on paper because you don't want to do a big presentation. They will give you their validation, and that will release a lot of that built up, pent up energy, that tension that you're feeling. However, remember that any kind of presentation also requires more than one step. Which takes us to the second part of this podcast, which is having a stock first line. If you sat through many of my presentations, you would recognize that I was saying the same line over and over again. Here's how I would begin almost any presentation. I'd say this. As I look around the room, I can see all your happy, smiling faces. And the reason why you're going to be more happy and more smiley is because you're going to learn about why customers buy and why they don't. Now, that was a line that I used over and over again for years on end. And if I was making a presentation for the brain audit, I'd talk about why customers buy and why they don't. If I was talking about a different topic, like pricing or conversion, then I would change that line just a little bit. But the core of the line was always the same. I would always say, as I look around the room, I can see all your happy, smiling faces. And then people would smile back. And I would pause. And then I would continue with the next couple of lines. So why is this opening line so important? Of all the lines that you're using in your presentation, nothing is as scary as the first line, or maybe even the first few lines. You want to make a good impression on your audience, and it drives you crazy because you need to warm up a bit before you start to relax. This is why it's very crucial to have a line that you can use on a regular basis. And you'd think, well, everybody's going to know. If I repeat it now and then later at some other presentation, but nobody's coming to all of your presentations. And this is why you have to have a stock first line. And you can use it for years on end, as I did, changing it only just a little bit. The beauty about this line is it's so simple that you don't have to remember anything. It's just something that you say that gives some sort of energy to the audience. You don't want to start off with, "Good morning, it's nice to be here," because that's really boring, that's cheesy, that's what bad presenters do. You don't have to start that way. Your job is to take that audience member who's in their world and pull them into your world. So you have to say something that snaps them out of their world immediately. Let's run past that entire first paragraph so you can see how I would go about things. So I would say, as I look around the room, I can see all your happy, smiling faces. And you're going to be more happy and more smiley before we leave. That's because you will learn about the secret of why customers buy and why they don't. When we try to sell something, whether it is a house or a product or a service, We find that customers will show a great amount of interest, and then suddenly, without warning, they will go quiet. You don't hear from them, and you have no idea why they have backed away. In today's presentation, we will look at what goes on in the mind of the customer. Let's find out what's really going on and how you can use it to your benefit. So as you're sitting there in the audience, you're not looking at your phone anymore. You've snapped from your world into my world. But there was nothing spectacular about that paragraph. It started with a stock line, and then it brought out the problem and the solution. This is a paragraph that I would practice, I would rehearse over and over again till I didn't have to think about it. It's the kind of thing that you would want to make part of your repertoire whenever you're giving a speech. While these first few lines might seem repetitive to you, they're brand new for that audience that is sitting there waiting for you to give your presentation. It's very efficient because you don't have to worry about how you're going to start your speech. Once you get past the first line and then into the first paragraph, your breathing slows down considerably. And that's because you have developed that sense of momentum. You are definitely less nervous than before you get on stage. Starting off with a formula like the one above is what will work for you time and time again. The other way to start a speech is to tell a story. As I got more comfortable on stage, I dropped the opening first line. Instead, I would use the power of surprise. However, even in that situation, I would have a first stock line. For instance, the line would be something like, "Today, I'm going to tell you a story of how the Taj Mahal was almost destroyed by a pilot." It doesn't matter what the audience is doing at this point in time, you will notice that they will stop and look up. And this is because you've taken them by surprise. Yet, even while you're surprising them, you're still using a stock line. You're still saying something to the effect of, "I'm going to tell you a story of ... And then you continue the story. Because it's a story, it takes the pressure off you. You're just relating something that's so surprising that you get the audience's attention. Once again, it only takes a couple of paragraphs before you start to settle in and relax. At this point, all you have to do is continue the story and connect it to your subject matter. It's irrelevant whether you choose the story or the stock line. What's relevant is that you don't have to remember the first paragraph or the first couple of paragraphs. It's something that just rolls out of you as you get on stage. You will still be quite nervous, but a lot less nervous than if you were trying to say something like, "Good morning, it's nice to see you here," or something cheesier than that. 2 points we've covered so far. The first thing is get external validation. The second is know that first line and then just rattle it off over and over again. There's one more thing that you should do, and it's on the day of the event. And that is that you have to distract yourself. How are you going to distract yourself? The only thing you can think of is the presentation, and more of the presentation. But you have to distract yourself. Let's find out how you can go about that. Here's an email that I got from a client recently, and the email references an event from 2009. And here's how it reads. "Sean, I want to express a ton of gratitude to you for an encounter that we had many years ago. To be specific, it was 2009 in Chicago. It was the first morning of an internet marketing conference held by Kevin McCarthy. I woke up early that Saturday. I had a mixture of excitement and anxiety. I went down to the lobby to grab some brekkie. I loaded up a tray of scrambled eggs and bacon and went looking for a place to sit. I turned the corner and you were sitting at a 2-person table working on your MacBook. I think you said something like, "Hey Jack, I'm Sean. Congrats on winning the Affiliate Manager contest. Want to join me?" I said, "Awesome, thanks." But inside I was thinking, holy shit, this is Sean D'Souza and he's about to give a keynote speech at this event. And I clearly remember that you started showing me just a few slides from your keynote. The email goes on to explain about that encounter, how it made such a difference. However, what's important to note is that he's talking about how I helped him, but in fact, he was helping me. And this is why. When you're giving a presentation, you are pretty anxious. We all know that. A good idea before you get on stage is to have breakfast with somebody. And the breakfast works in the same way as the external validation that we talked about. You might not talk about the content that you're presenting, or you might just. However, when you fill in that dead space, that space between I woke up in the morning completely tense, and now I have to give a presentation, and there's this big gap, you're filling in that dead space with some chatter. You are distracting yourself from what is to come. You might sit over their breakfast and explain what you're going to do, and in doing so, you relax. If, on the other hand, you are in your hotel room or sitting in your house, all you're doing is winding yourself up. A family member cannot reduce their pressure no matter how hard he or she may try. What you need, once again, is an external force. I usually make sure that I organize a breakfast with someone before a seminar or presentation. It drives Renuka crazy. She thinks that I need to relax, to rest my voice, in fact, but instead I'm going around chattering. Yet the reason for this breakfast or this distraction is just so that I calm down. It's a real pain waiting for something to happen. My advice to anyone that's giving a presentation is to distract yourself by meeting with someone for at least 30 to 40 minutes before the presentation or even earlier in the day. Ideally, it should be a meeting at the venue itself. That's it. We're at the end of the podcast. I know, it came suddenly, didn't it? But there are 3 things that you need to do to make sure that you get a good presentation going without all of that stress. The first thing is not about rehearsal or practice. You have to get external validation. It's very strictly about external validation. You have to say something and then they have to respond to it. The second strategy would be to make sure that you remember the first paragraph. Keep it so simple that you can be woken up at 2 a.m. and you can rattle off the paragraph or at least that first line in your sleep. You can wake me up at any point in time and I will go, as I look around the room, I can see all your happy smiling faces. I will say that any time of day or night and then add something to it. So have something like that. The third factor is to distract yourself. There is this huge gap between waking up and making the presentation. So sit with someone and just chatter over breakfast. Just make it very informal. You'll still be thinking about the presentation, but it'll go down to lower volume. You won't be thinking about it if you're just sitting by yourself in your room, in your hotel room, in your house. That's when you go crazy. Making a presentation is scary for a lot of people, but it doesn't have to be super scary. You can reduce a lot of the tension, and you can do it with these 3 ways. So what's the first thing you can do? Get someone. Get someone to sit with you so that you can go through those slides and do it on paper and get that external validation. If there's nothing else you do that one thing, and you'll see how the tension comes right down. And possibly you sleep through your alarm as well. And with that, let's find out what's happening in Psychotactics land. In late November, we're going to do something that we've never done before. We're going to have a strategy workshop in Paris, France, for just 6 people. And 4 of those seats have already gone. So if you would like to change the way you're doing something, then you can hire a coach, and that'll cost you tens of thousands of dollars over a year. Or you can check out this very unique opportunity. And yes, it's going to cost you some time and some money to get to Paris. But you will find that strategy is something that is absolutely crucial for your business. So check out psychotactics.com and go to workshops, and you'll find those couple of seats that are remaining. If, on the other hand, you would just like to meet up, we're going to have a meetup in Paris as well. So yes, show up there and let's have a good time. Probably 3 hours, probably 4, maybe the whole day. We don't know yet. And when we do a workshop, a strategy workshop, one of the first items that we tackle is uniqueness. There are so many products and services out there that seem exactly like yours. So how do you stand out? And if you can't make it to the workshop, then go to psychotactics.com/you goodies. That's U for umbrella and goodies. And what you'll get are a whole bunch of goodies on how to create your uniqueness. Because uniqueness is not about your company. It is about every individual product or service that you sell. Every single one of them, just like members in a family, they all have to have their uniqueness. And this means that you've got quite a task at hand, because you've got to separate all of this information. You have to make each product, each service unique, and you have to know how to do it. So go to psychotactics.com/you goodies, and it's the start of a journey. So we'll either see you in Paris, or we'll see you creating some really cool products and services with the uniqueness of their own. I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye.